All right, next let's talk about the greatest beer run ever. This is on Apple TV, rated R. It's a comedy drama or a dramedy or a comma, as I like to call it. Oh, Neal, you dog. 2 hours and 6 minutes long. Stars Zac Efron as John Chickie Donohue. Great nickname. Russell Crowe as Arthur Coates, who's a war correspondent for someone, I don't know, Time magazine or some bullshit. And then Bill Murray as the Colonel, who has his own bar. He's a bartender. This began streaming on September 30th on Apple TV. Got to be honest, the accents threw me off for the first couple scenes. I was like, oh, so they're in Boston. No clue or idea that they were supposed to be from Inwood, New York. I just got a very Boston vibe from everyone. But then again, like, I'm not a native New Yorker. I work in the city. I work in the city of rock and roll. The accents were tough to kind of get over for a little bit. So what is this movie? It's a man's story of leaving New York in 1967 to bring beer to his childhood buddies and the army while they are fighting in Vietnam. Yeah, to show support, Zac Efron's character Chickie decides to do something totally outrageous, travel to the front line by himself to bring the soldiers a little piece of home, their favorite can of American beer. So, pause. What do you think the can of American beer is? Can of American beer, okay? None of that foreign crap. None of the imported crap. Domestic American. What do you think it is? Originally, if they're from Boston, I think you'd probably think, oh, this is a great time for Sam Adams to show their mugs. Or Pawtucket Patriot. No. So it's not, they're not from Boston area, so it's not New England beers. So they're from Inwood, New York. What do Inwood New Yorkers drink that's American and what their favorite? You guess Budweiser. You're freaking wrong, dude. It's a Pabst Blue Ribbon, PBR. I guess maybe I should do a little more research on PBR, but it feels like the only PBR that I've known is like ironically ordering PBR in like hipster Brooklyn or something like that. Or, I ordered it in a bar in Philly and tried, and the guy said $2 just to drink it, $1 to shoot it. So I decided to shoot it. So that's PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon. Who knew? I mean, this is the late 60s we're talking about. So maybe that was where Pabst Blue Ribbon was at as like the dominant American beer. However, what started as a well-meaning journey quickly turns into the adventure of a lifetime as Chickie confronts the reality of this into the adventure of a lifetime. Oh, quickly turns this adventure in a lifetime. Hey, read much? Confronts the reality of this controversial war, and his reunions with his childhood buddies thrust him into the complexities and responsibilities of adulthood. So it's kind of a coming-of-age, growing-up story, stepbrothers-ish in a way. Really hard to pinpoint his age. Because how old do you think Zac Efron is right now? I would say he's got to be in his early 30s, right? The way this was portrayed, it was like, okay, well, he's too old to join and enlist and serve, I guess. But yet all his closest buddies from the neighborhood are in the military. So I think that kind of threw me off too. It's like, I obviously wasn't alive for Viet freaking Nam, but my mother was. And so I remember I asked her and he was like, oh, your father. He couldn't get drafted, or he got out of the draft because he's got flat feet. And I was like, is that how drafts work? I feel like you could be like quadriplegic and they'd be like, get your ass out there. I don't know. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's why Dad didn't go to Vietnam. His friend ended up going, and as far as we can tell, doing okay. So it's a very delicate subject, very sensitive. And I mean, how many Vietnam movies that are comedies would you think get good reviews from critics? When's the last time you saw, I guess Good Morning Vietnam? I gotta watch that with Robin Williams. I should probably watch that. So maybe that's a good example, but I feel like, this is written and directed by Peter Farrelly, who did Green Book. There's Something About Mary and Dumb and Dumber. Some of my favorite all-time movies. And I think you got to applaud him a little bit for taking on such a challenge. I mean, this is a challenging story. Vietnam, a war that protests nonstop for however many years. Nobody won, or we didn't win, or whatever. And we lost a lot, 50, 60,000 lives lost or something like that. Could be making that up. So yeah, sensitive subject, tough topic to broach. And then you're going to make a comedy, not a full blown comedy, but you're still going to try and tell this story. You know, I think a lot of people might say, well, why this story versus all the other stories that are out there? Because it's crazy and stupid, but it's honorable and impressive that this fucking dude can go over there and accomplish his mission, come out of it fairly unscathed, and changed in the process. His whole way of thinking about the war and supporting the troops has changed as well. So it's described as it's based on an incredible true story, and it's a heartfelt coming of age tale about friendship, loyalty, and sacrifice. It's based on a book of the same name, memoir written by the John Chick Donohue and J.T. Malloy. The difference, though, and they didn't really call this out in the movie, and I'm wondering if it would have been better to go this route instead of the route they went, which was this happens over the span of a couple days. In the book, Donohue's trip is 8 weeks, which is very much more impressive than a little less than a week. In my HO, dude. Dylan O'Brien and Viggo Mortensen were originally attached to the movie before Apple picked up the movie. And so once Apple got involved, they were like, nah, screw Apple, dude. I'm a PC kind of dude. I'm an Android kind of dude. Peter Farrelly had tried working with Russell Crowe once before they were in talks for the Three Stooges. And that obviously didn't happen. But the Three Stooges, my God, can you name, like, so many movies where there's just like, this is going to be so good. I can't believe they're making a movie. And like, wait, I know who's going to be this guy. I know who's going to be that guy. I know who's going to play this part. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be perfect. I can't wait. And like, I never watched the Three Stooges movie. I can't tell you anyone who has. So it's like, and that's what it is. Okay, great. It's a fourth collaboration between Peter Farrelly and Bill Murray. Kingpin, great movie. Ernie, Big Ern. Osmosis Jones, never saw it. Dumb and Dumber 2, I saw it, and I don't remember Bill Murray being in that. So that was interesting. So in the movie, Chickie is a slacking merchant seaman. Seaman. Who lives with his family in Inwood, which is that was interesting because like his mother and father don't seem that old at all. I mean, you look at the actors who play them, and you're like, oh, you guys are in your late 30s, early 40s, maybe. And if Chickie's supposed to be what, 30-ish, or is it late 20s? What are we talking about here? What's the cutoff? I feel like the cutoff for getting drafted is not 24, is it? 25? Can't be. So he's still living at home with his parents, merchant seaman, which we used to play the Merchant Marines in college football. And I was like, I don't know what you guys are. What are you guys? Like, do you just ship seafood? What are you doing? Chickie's sister, Christine, is strongly opposed to the Vietnam War, in contrast to Chickie and their father, who are formerly served. And they learn that an old friend died in action. And while attending the funeral, he finds out that another friend has MIA, possibly KIA. And so Tommy Minogue. And so Tommy Minogue's mother is like, hey, I heard you're going over there. You going over to Vietnam? Because, Chickie gets drunk after the funeral or before the funeral. Before, I don't know. Gets drunk and says, everyone's like, we should do something. We got to show them support because as far as the troops can tell, if they're watching, which I don't think they were, if they're watching, they don't want to see all these protests and people being so angry about them being there. They want support. They want to be, we should let them know that we acknowledge them and that we see them and value them and hear them and know that it's not all bad back home, that we do support them. And so that's when Chickie comes up with the idea to do the beer run. And so Tommy's mother catches wind of that and is like, hey, I got something for you to give to Tommy. And it's like a rosary bead type thing. And she's like, well, he already has one, but it never hurts to have an extra one. It's like, okay. So he ends up making it over to Vietnam and gets caught up in everything, and hijinks ensue. Most of the troops are like, dude, you're an idiot. What are you doing out here, Chickie? You're going to get yourself killed. And then they have a beer and they're like, whoa, I've never seen the guys like that. Thank you so much for bringing that beer. It's like, oh my God, Okay, a little hot and cold action, but it seems like if you didn't say this is based on a true story and there's a memoir and it's a book and it's like pretty much as far as everyone or everything that I've come across, it's like pretty accurate. The part where it's like the military doesn't like dealing with CIA agents, the note on them was that they will be dressed as like they're on vacation and they're called tourists because they look like tourists. You know, a Hawaiian shirt, you know, camera around the neck or something like that, looking like they're on vacation. And that's how you know they're CIA, and that's how Chickie's dressed. And so a lot of the military think that he's CIA. And so a lot of his demands and requests are met because they don't want to have to deal with the CIA. Hard to believe that worked. I don't think that would work now. I think that definitely could work in 1967. So that was pretty cool. As soon as he befriends that one Vietnamese traffic guard type guy, it's like, I don't have a good feeling about this. It's like, good God, no. Like, of course, something so good and pure has to be taken from us. Yeah, the part where he goes, he's like, I'm trying to get north to see so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, well, the only way you're getting north is if you're a member of the press or something like that. And so he goes, all right, well, I'm going to go to the hotel where they're staying and, you know, chat them up, see what's going on. And of course he does. And maybe this is why I never became a journalist, but it feels like that it was as far as my experience has gone, a lot of the journalists are so, I get it. I mean, I guess I get it, but it's just like, do you have to be that way all the time? I guess I'm just speaking from my personal experience working at SNY and dealing with someone that came from the newspaper side of things and is like, well, this is how we did it at the newspaper. And I was like, newsflash, newspapers are dead. Ha ha. You know, I just wanted to say that to her, but it's so bad. It's just like, oh, why do you have a stick? Why do you think you're so much more important than you are? Like, well, and why do you look down on everyone else? I don't know. I don't know why I have such limited experience dealing with journalists, but it's just like, that's the vibe I get, is like, they're just such unhappy people that also feel like they have to take it out on people that don't deserve it. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, I get it. Chickie's naive and he's kind of a doe in headlights. Like, I get it. What he's doing is brazen and blah, blah, blah. But it's like the total disrespect and disregard for someone, just like openly shitting on them. But yeah, so that's the journey that he goes on, is like, he's trying to like make good with these press people to get on some kind of ship up north. And they're like, well, no, we're journalists and we can't get up there. So he has to find another way, and ends up, the scenes with Habershaw at the one base where Habershaw is like, oh, so you're a tourist, huh? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, hey, can you put in a good word for me at Langley? And he's like, yeah, I'll tell him, no problem. Like, those scenes were probably some of my favorites. Eventually, the CIA ruse comes to an end because there's an actual CIA tourist guy who ends up like interrogating someone on the same helicopter chopper, and then throws the dude out the chopper, and he basically knows what's up. And so that's when Zac Efron Chickie has to go on the run. The other thing that was heart-wrenching, and I've given a lot of thought about this, and I think people get upset about it, but it's kind of like, I'm not sure the value of things like that, other than, all right, so here's what I'm talking about. Arthur Coates, war correspondent, played by Russell Crowe, kind of not falls in love with, but recognizes and realizes the absurdity of Chickie's story and is like, wants in on it. And that's where Chickie gets the real scoop on like everything that's going on and seeing death. And, you know, when there's an North Korean army. No, it's not it. Jesus Christ, Neal, idiot. The insurgents, the rebellions, the whatever. They decide to, for most of the movie, the conflict is believed to be happening out in the jungle and not near the city of Saigon. So it's a very weird feeling, because it's like you're in a country where there's war happening. It's just not happening right here. It's happening like over there in the woods. But yet people are just sitting, at the bar having a beer and like shooting the shit, as if like, and you don't really hear bombs going off or gunfire. It's just like, wow, I'm currently like kind of in the area of the war and like the same country, but You wouldn't know just by sitting at this bar until like the final climactic scene where all hell breaks loose and the insurgents, rebels, attack the city. The Tet Offensive. Sorry, my bad. The Viet Cong attacked Saigon in the Tet Offensive. Yeah, so trying to come to terms with the military not really shooting us straight. And the journalists, Chickie feels that they're only telling one side of the story, the bad side and not the good side. And I kind of see from that perspective, because it's like they don't do a whole lot of, I mean, when he brings the one friend the beer, they're able to like hang out and play cards and shoot and talk smack and like joke around and goof off. And it's like, you don't get to see that, but it's bad. I get it. It's bad. It's bad. He's bad. So, he witnesses this tank come by and blow a hole in the wall. And that's how the Viet Cong slip into the embassy and do damage. And afterwards, you see, I guess the general or someone higher up in the military official saying that it was the Viet Cong that blew a hole in the wall. And Chickie's like, whoa. And that was The Loss of Innocence by Calvin Klein. Come to find out that this guy, Tommy Minogue, who's been missing, who Chickie is holding out hope for, even though everyone's telling him, no, the guy is gone, man. He's gone. And he's like, well, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. You got to hold out hope. There's no evidence, because what's the alternative? And then he ultimately finds out that that guy died. But you flash back to him, Chickie, convincing Tommy Minogue to enlist or enroll in the draft or whatever. And so he feels responsible for his death and goes to visit the mother to give her the rosary beads that he wasn't able to give to Tommy. And she says, don't worry about it. I forgive you. Gives him a hug. It's pretty cool. That was a touching moment. Now, let's look at these reviews, dude. It's freaking reviews, dude. 41% of critics gave it a favorable review out of 111 reviews. Average rating of 5.1 out of 10 from the critics. And I think the top critics were even harsher on it. The consensus from critics, far from intoxicating. You're going to hear a lot of puns about beer. So saddle up. Far from intoxicating, the greatest beer run ever reduces its fun, fact-based story to a flat, flavorless brew. Ooh, burn. Brian Tallarico of RogerEbert.com. These freaking flies, dude. Trying to escape. A movie that's about as realistic about combat, trauma, and death as a high school play. Come on. Feels like you're exaggerating, Brian. It feels like a little bit of hyperbole. Like these critics, they and I mean, kudos to him. Like he got featured on my pod. So I guess it pays to be outrageous, but like, come on, dude, high school play? You did see that comedy was the genre, right? You did see that? I mean, the ability to try and do a comedy about Vietnam, I guess only Good Morning Vietnam is being able to do it. Well, I guess MASH. I guess the TV show MASH. So yeah, I guess there have been plenty of examples of good comedies that about a war, especially a war like Vietnam. Tim Grierson of Screen International says Zac Efron does his best to exude everyman charm, but the film feels manipulative and glib. I think glib was used a lot. And I'm going to be real with y'all. No freaking clue, dude. I mean, I kind of have a sense of what glib is. Take a little gander. Fluent and voluble, but insincere and shallow. Come on. I don't know about that, dude. Insincere and shallow. Oof. How is that insincere? Like a person trying to honor and pay homage to his friends, show support. I mean, it's the ultimate show of support. Like I'm going to put my life in jeopardy, even though he didn't really see it that way. Pretty much everyone who ran into him was like, what the hell are you doing here? And shallow, he wasn't doing it to like get press. I think that was made pretty clear. He wasn't doing it to like, I mean, can you imagine if the movie was made today? Like the person that's doing that is doing it to go viral 1,000%. So this is back before all that. Like he wasn't looking to get press or fame or fortune. He just he thought it was a good idea and followed through on it. So I don't know about all that shit. Reducing the complexity of the United States' ill-advised involvement in the Vietnam War to a would-be heartwarming tale of a callow regular dude who wises up. But that was the story. Dude, like they're just doing the story. That was the story. Like they're not trying to reduce. I don't think they were trying to reduce the complexity of it all. I mean, and there are plenty of, and I think the critics mentioned this too. It's like parallels to what's kind of happening today or what has happened over the history of the United States. I mean, the Vietnam War is probably just the one that sticks out the most because it was such a quagmire, right? This is the word, giggity. So I don't know if it was like reducing the complexity, but if you're looking at it through the lens of this particular person, isn't it the whole point? You know, he had a simple view of the war. Our friends are over there, they're fighting, they need our support. So why would it get more, it gets more complex for him as he's progressing through the story. That's the whole freaking character arc, dude, is it going from simple to complex and him trying to process all that complexity. And the dude's not Harvard material, even though ironically, he does after this, I guess he does end up going to the Harvard School of Business and opens up became very successful in business. So, you know, but think about all the men of that cut from that cloth of that age. Like even look at his friends, you know, during that time and their thought processes and stuff like that. It's just, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of just being accurate more than anything. Like they're not saying, hey, you know, the war is not the war. This is how simple the war is. The journalists aren't telling the truth and we're not supporting the troops. And there's too many protests. Like he had to grasp with that, you know, going from that initial protest scene where he confronts his sister and all those protesters to when he, you know, he bonds with his sister when he comes back and he's like, listen, I need to do less drinking, more thinking. And it's like, oh, did you want like a fucking monologue or soliloquy about, you know, going into all kinds of metaphors and analogies about his time over there? No, it's just like a regular blue collar guy had a great dumb idea, executed it, learn stuff in the process, come back. I mean, that's the story. What did you want this? What do you think? So this story should not be told is what you're saying. Cool. Just doesn't make any sense. Mark Feeney of the Boston Globe says a seriously miscast Efron does his best. He's good at looking perturbed and perturbation of many sorts is Chickie's lot throughout the movie. It's about all Efron's good at here. Oh, come on, dude. I don't think it was miscast. I think Zac Efron has now, I mean, ever since he did Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates, or no, even before that, when he did Neighbors, for me, that was Zac Efron's coming out party. As a guy that's like, he can pull off the comedy and he can pull off scenes with some weight, some gravitas. If you're watching the video, I'm trying to catch flies as I'm doing this video. What the fuck? God damn these flies. Go into your trap. So I don't think he was miscast at all. So you think Dylan O'Brien would have been better? I mean, I'm not saying he wouldn't have been better. I just don't know that he would have been as good comedically. Zac Efron, I don't know. Maybe I'm completely off on this, but I loved Zac Efron on Neighbors. Neighbors 2, obviously. Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. I thought he was great in that. I just think he's got comedic chops, and you know, he's in Baywatch, the movie. I don't know. I think he's grown on me a lot in the past 9 years, 8 to 9 years. Holy crap! I don't think he was miscast. Would Dylan O'Brien have been better in a different way? You know, I loved him in was it Love and Monsters? I forget what else he was in, but I think he probably would have. The comedy would not have been as good, but maybe the drama would have been better. Okay, we can vibe with that. Here, let me break it down for your critics looking for complexity. 91% of the audience on Rotten Tomatoes gave it a favorable review with an average rating of 4.4 out of 5. I agree with that. Although I don't know about 4.4 out of 5. That's pretty intense. I think a lot has to deal with the fact that it is, in fact, based on a true story, and it's like close. You know, a lot of people can say it's based on a true story and then they fucking run wild with it. And it's like, this is not even anything like the true story. This is like, according to what I've seen and heard, very true to the book and to the memoirs and to the experiences. So I think that's why it gets that extra bump. I would say I don't know if I'd give it a 4.4, but it's close to a 4. Above a 3.5, close to a 4. 4.4 is high. Ooh. IMDb average rating is 6.8 out of 10. IMDb ratings are so freaking weird, dude. I don't know how much I trust it, but majority of people gave it that 6, 7, 8 range that we see. Most people gave it a 7. I think I gave it a 7. No, more than I think about it. They have a breakdown of ratings by demographic, and females gave it a higher rating at 7 over males, gave it a 6.7. The high, get this. Well, there's only been 4 ratings. This is a weird one. For women under the age of 18, there were 4 reviews. They gave it an average rating of 4, the lowest out of every demographic. And if I have to guess why, it is because of the way that they portray Chickie's sister. There aren't a ton of female roles in this movie, so I will say that. I don't know if it passes the Bechdel test. There's like 1 female journalist, and then there's the mother, and then there's the other mothers, and then there's Christine, the sister. And it does feel like the sister is a bit one note and one dimensional, and you don't really get to see the depth or kind of like her to get fleshed out or more than just one thing until like really the end of the movie, where like, you know, Chickie has this kind of come to Jesus moment where like he summarizes everything that he's learned. So, okay. I guess I understand that rating. A little bit harsh, but I'll roll with it. The highest rating of all demographics was males, 7.5. There was only 3 reviews, but it's pretty freaking high, dude. And maybe that says something about why it didn't hit so much with the adult critics, is because like it does have that high school drinking mentality almost, where it's like, oh, we're going on a beer run, and like beer runs are taboo because it's illegal, and like we gotta find so and so to get his beer. It's like it's a hunt, it's a quest to trek to get beer. So maybe I think that's why it might have been so appealing to those 3 reviewers. Not to speak for them or anything. And then the next highest ratings was from females 45 and over, 7.1. I would imagine that's because of just a lot of mothers possibly thinking about like, what if my son had to go to war, or my son has gone to war, and the feelings that I felt and stuff like that. So wide range of emotions. But it's a recommend for me, dog. Could it have been a little better? There was a section or 2 that might have dragged a little bit. Curious to see if there was any discussion about possibly drawing this out over 8 weeks as opposed to what seemed like days. I guess that's what I was trying to get into with Arthur Coates and Russell Crowe, was like the scenes where the embassy is being attacked, the Tet Offensive from the Viet Cong. And then when he goes to this other base, and it's like a triage unit there, and there's just guys laid out all over the place, missing limbs and just severe damage done. And you see Russell Crowe, even as the Tet Offensive was happening, right? So as the attack is happening, he's got his camera out and he's shooting. He's taking pictures of dead people on the street. He's taking pictures of guys on a stretcher. And I thought it was interesting that, and maybe this is, you know, I did not enlist in the military, did not, enroll or serve. So maybe someone in the military can help me out here. But like, you got like a press dude, some journalist in a vest with a camera is like taking pictures of all this, like your dead buddies and stuff. That, like, I'd imagine that would lead to a lot of fights and fist fights and conflict. Like, dude, can you have some respect? Jesus Christ. But I mean, that's where I'm conflicted, because it's like, you're a war correspondent. You're supposed to be like documenting essentially the war, so that people need to see these atrocities and this, the graphic nature of war, because it gets lost in text, I think, sometimes, or a lot of the time. You know, if people see it, then they can actually believe it, and maybe it'll sway some minds, change people's perspective. It's still tough for me to swallow. It's just like, and you see that with, I think a lot of photojournalists, where it's like, they have to go into these areas where, you know, it's brutal, but how are you going to convey that brutality if you don't take the picture? You know, you have to actually do it for people to fully grasp and understand what's going on. So that was tough, but I got it. I understood it. And it was funny, like, not funny, but when Chickie's like, all right, let's go, let's get out of here. I got a ride to the flight, and it's going to be all right. And I was like, no, I'm not going. I can't go. It's my job. Like, I have to be here to capture all this. Woof, dude.